Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This is a film that I hadn't seen in years, and I always remember really liking it the first time I saw it. And after watching it again, I completely forgot how much I loved this, but now I remember. I really, really do like this movie. In fact, I'd probably say, yeah, definitely. This is my second favorite film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and one of my favorite Wes Craven films. I really do enjoy Dream Warriors, and I really do like The Dream Master. But New Nightmare has things in it that I just love about movies. I love films that take the meta approach and do it right. Just like I love a really good horror anthology, where a really good horror anthology is like watching multiple great horror films all in one movie. Well, a great meta film, especially a meta horror film, is like watching all these different. It's like watching a movie within a movie within another. It's really really interesting and a very immersive experience, and that's a perfect way to put this film. It's a very immersive experience, because it takes place in what is which is a pseudo reality, because it follows Heather Langenkamp and her family, and it deals with this demonic force, this entity that's coming out of whatever realm it was held in. It's being let loose from its prison, let out of its cage, because it was caged in by the Nightmare on Elm Street films, because they found a way, their screenplays, to capture the essence of this entity and keep it locked and keep it held back and keep it at bay. And there hasn't been another Nightmare on Elm Street film since Freddy's dead for a long time, for at least 3 years, and now the entity's getting stronger and stronger and getting ready to come out from beyond the veil and just strike. And I love that concept. The concept itself is really brilliant, and this is a fantastic film, and multiple different aspects. There's only a few tiny little things about it that bring it down. Don't really even bring it down that much. I noticed them, but I still couldn't even bring myself to even knock it down half a star. That's how much I really, really like this movie. So yeah, it's my second favorite film in the franchise, but in terms of just overall quality, it's right up there with the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So Wes Craven comes back to the franchise with New Nightmare, mainly, and this, interestingly enough, this whole meta aspect, this meta horror aspect of A Nightmare on Elm Street is not a new thing. Wes wanted to do that with A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. When he was signed on to co-write the film's script, that was his idea, was that it was going to be a meta horror film where the film was going to take place on the set of the new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and Freddy was going to come into the real world and start attacking people on the set. And New Line wasn't interested in that. They didn't want to go that route. And in a lot of ways, I'm glad they didn't, because that saved New Nightmare for a time period where it could really, really stand out. And so, and then we still also got the excellent Dream Warriors. So, but that goes to show you that Wes was way ahead of his time back in the late 80s. Scream and New Nightmare and the whole meta horror stuff that these films brought into the cultural lexicon is not something that's a new thing. It's something that Wes had an idea about and wanted to do ever since 1986 or 87, when he was working on the screenplay for Dream Warriors. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. And with the look of Freddy in this, it's more close to what he originally wanted Freddy to be. He wanted Freddy to be more sadistic, to be more evil, and rougher around the edges. And I love the look of this demon Freddy. I mean, just such a simple thing as these yellow contacts that give this demonic eyes. It just creates a whole new look for Freddy. This is definitely the most intimidating and the scariest and the most sadistic and vicious Freddy out of the entire franchise. I also like the way they redesigned the claw, where it looked more organic. You have the muscles, and then the bones showing, and it's a really effective looking practical makeup effect. And so yeah, and Robert Englund plays Freddy, of course, but he also plays himself. But even in the end credits, another nice little bit of meta humor here is that in the end credits, Freddy Krueger is listed as himself. He's not listed as being played by Robert Englund, which I like that. Now, the film is, like I said, it's also written by Wes Craven, who writes and directs this and does a fantastic job doing both jobs. It's a really great tour de force by Wes of writing and directing. In a lot of ways, New Nightmare is his precursor to the type of elements and the type of things that he would use for the Scream franchise, which would really get him critical acclaim, and the Scream films would be really successful. New Nightmare, though, for some reason, didn't make that much money. It was made for an $8 million budget and it only made about $19 million. So for some reason, audiences weren't really ready for it yet. But when Scream came out and it brought in the whole meta-horror aspect to an even grander scale, in some ways, than New Nightmare did. New Nightmare, in some ways, you could say is a little bit subtle in some ways compared to Scream in terms of its meta-horror. But it's still there. And I haven't seen Scream in forever, so watching those films again is going to be like watching them for the first time. So, but New Nightmare, I do remember liking and enjoying, and then I watched it again, and it was just like, this movie is awesome. This is an epic film. This is an amazing movie. And in some aspects, I wouldn't say it's technically underrated because it does have a fan following. Critics did like it when it came out. Underrated in terms of box office, absolutely. But underrated in terms of Nightmare on Elm Street film, I really wouldn't say it is because there's a lot of people who point to this one as, for the most part, the second best film of the franchise after Wes Craven's 1984 film of Nightmare on Elm Street. The original Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, it also has some other really good stuff. Of course, the cast, which I'll get into in a little bit. But you have a score by J. Peter Robinson, which I really like, especially the bit of music that he uses near the end in the climax. It's epic. It's grand. I love it. It's great. I'd say this soundtrack is underrated. The movie itself, not so much. Maybe it was when it came out, because it was a little bit overlooked, but now it's gotten that cult following, it's gotten that respect, and so I wouldn't really necessarily call this an underrated film, but the score, definitely. Great score by J. Peter Robinson. Some moments of it are a little bit too operatic and maybe a little bit too hammy, but most of it, though, is really, really good. And the cinematography by Mark Irwin is great. He really is, him and Wes work together really well. They create a film that just has some really gorgeous shots. I mean, the shot of Freddy in the clouds or the moon, it was just it's a gorgeous shot. It looks like something straight out of a surrealistic painting. It's really, really effective. And there are a lot of sequences that just did a great job blurring the line between reality and the dream world. And this blurring of fantasy and reality was something that I thought was kind of not nearly as effective in some of the later Nightmare on Elm Street films. Wes Craven comes back and really brings it back to the forefront and really does a great job making you go like, oh wait, am I in the dream world? Or is this reality? And that's kind of what he was really known for what he was doing with the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and he expands upon that even more with A New Nightmare. And so it's also edited by Patrick Lussier, who I honestly believe he did a great job editing the film as well. It's very slick, it's very seamless, it's really well done. Now, when it comes to the cast, you got an excellent cast. You got Heather Langenkamp returns to the franchise as herself and as Nancy. Robert Englund plays himself and the new demonic Freddy Krueger. Miko Hughes plays Dylan Porter. Miko, you might remember him as the kid from Pet Sematary. And I gotta agree with my friend Matt here on this. His performance is obnoxious. He's annoying. He tries to be like the kid from The Shining, red rum, but it's not done that well. He just comes across as laughable when he's trying to be scary with a demon Freddy voice and making, he's trying to make a scary face, and it just doesn't work. It worked. He did a lot better job with that in Pet Sematary. Here he's like, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. It was like a little bit, not that bad, but it's still pretty bad. And he just would not stop screaming. It was annoying, and I know he's a kid who's suffering from these problems, but did we really need to approach it that way? I don't think so. So, I don't know if it's Miko's performance or the way he's written, but he is pretty obnoxious and pretty grating to the ears. And so, yeah. But it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the film that much, though. Because he's there, there's moments where you're like, oh, God, kid, stop. But it doesn't really hurt my overall enjoyment or my overall score for the film that much. This is a very small problem to me. Then you have John Saxon, who plays himself. He also plays Lieutenant Donald Thompson. Tracy Middendorf plays Julie, who's technically Heather's babysitter. She's pretty much the babysitter for Miko Hughes. She does all right. David Newsom plays Chase Porter, her husband, who's an effects guy. I liked him a little bit that he had in the film. I thought he had a nice sense of humor, and he was a likable guy. He had a good personality. Really seen that actor a lot. Really much else later. He reminded me a lot of what's his name from the Shining TV remake. He reminded me a lot of that actor. I can't remember his name for some reason. I'm looking it up right now. Just Steven Weber. That's it. He reminded me a lot of Steven Weber. And you have Fran Bennett, who plays Dr. Christine Hefner. God, what a bitch. Total bitch. Like, she holds Heather Langenkamp on hostage to get information out of her in the hospital. When she finds out that her son might have been watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films that Nancy, that Heather was in, she's like, oh, that explains his problems then. I'm like, oh, God. She's one of those people who thinks watching horror films is what makes you do crazy things. It's going to make you crazy. Oh, great. Just total bitch. Yeah, the film does a good job. She does a good job acting-wise, too, of being a bitch. Wes Craven plays himself. Robert Shaye plays himself. Mary Magdalena plays herself. So Sam Rubin plays himself. Sarah Risher plays herself. You also have Lynn Shay, who has a cameo as Nurse with Pills. Yep. Sums up her character pretty good. She's just a nurse with pills. And Nick Corey plays himself. He played Rod in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Tuesday Night also plays herself. She was Kristen in the fourth in the Dream Master. So she was in the funeral scene along with Nick Corey. Now, Wes really wanted Johnny Depp for that scene, but he couldn't get the courage to ask him to be in the film. But after the movie came out, he talked to Johnny Depp and asked him, would you have been in the film? And Johnny Depp was like, yeah, I definitely would have been in the movie. You should have asked me. And then and I'm like, wow. I don't know why Wes thought he wouldn't have wanted to do it. Because he was in a cameo role in Freddy's Dead. If Johnny Depp didn't want anything to do with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, then he would not have cameoed in Freddy's Dead. So I don't get why Wes was so afraid of asking Johnny Depp to cameo in New Nightmare. Because he cameoed in Freddy's Dead, which was released 3 years before this. But maybe he thought his star was too bright at this time? I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, that's the cast. Now we get into the plot, which I think is a great plot. And Heather Langenkamp, she lives in Los Angeles with her husband Chase and her young son Dylan. And she has become quite popular due to her role as Nancy Thompson from the Nightmare on Elm Street film series, from the first film and the Dream Warriors. And one night she has a nightmare in which she, Dylan, and Chase are attacked by an animated Kruger claws from an upcoming Nightmare film in which two of the workers are brutally murdered on set. Really great opening. It really sucks you in. You're just like, what the hell is going on? And then you find out, oh, it's a dream. But it did a great job when at first I didn't think, I really thought it was on the set of the film. So it really does a great job bringing you right into the dream world from the beginning, and you think like, oh, you're really discombobulated from the moment the film starts. And she spies a cut on Chase's finger exactly like the one that he received in his dream, and this all happens after they wake up to an earthquake. which the earthquakes tie into the plot of the film in a really clever way, which I really like, is that with the earthquakes, these earthquakes are a sign of this force, this entity coming out from the ground and coming out from, the depths of hell pretty much into our realm. And these earthquakes are a sign of it. And earthquakes normally don't happen in LA, so this is a sign. And I like how later in the film, Nancy is the only one that starts feeling these earthquakes, and other people are thinking she's nuts. But you didn't feel that earthquake last night, because the entity's trying to get her and to get her son. And so I also like the touch where when the earthquake happens, there on her wall, there are these 3 deep gashes in the wall, which looks like scratches from a claw. And later in the film, these scratches get bigger and bigger as the entity gets closer and closer, which I really like that aspect of the film as well. So she spies a cut on Chase's finger, exactly the one he received in his dream, but they quickly dismiss the notion, because you just think, oh, I cut my hand on something that fell during the earthquake. Heather then receives a call from an obsessed fan who calls and quotes Freddy's nursery rhyme with an eerie Freddy-like voice, which coincides with a meeting that she has with New Line Cinema, in which she is pitched an idea by Robert Shaye to reprise her role as Nancy in a new Nightmare film, which Chase had been working on. And actually before that, there is a fun scene where she ends up getting a limo ride. She goes to do an interview for a talk show, and Robert Englund surprises her in Freddy makeup. And it's a fun scene, and I love the slow-mo shot of the crowd where Freddy is in the shadows and he's going like this. I just love that. And he's waving at the fans. And it just sums up how big Freddy Krueger had become. Freddy had become this big, popular pop culture icon. And the film did a good job showing that. And, pulling back the revealing a lot of that info, in the movie. Referencing how popular Freddy is in our realm in the film. I thought that was nice. And a lot of people, a lot of kids are fans of Freddy, and they want, a new Nightmare on Elm Street film. And you have a fun scene with Robert and Heather, where they're talking with each other, and then Robert's while walking out of the interview. Robert's talking to her, and he's like, "I think they'd like to see us together again." And she's like, "In what, a romantic comedy?" And then Robert's like, "Just because it's a love story doesn't mean it can't have a decapitation or two." So I had fun with that. That was pretty fun. And then there was a good moment too between Robert Shaye and Heather, where Robert's talking to her, and he's like, "How would you like to join us in the definitive Nightmare?" And Heather's like, "I thought you killed Freddy off." And Robert's like, "Well, we did. But the fans, God bless them, they're clamoring for more. I guess evil never dies, right?" So that was definitely, I thought was a, ooh, yep, it definitely does. Evil does not die. And so after that, that's when she ends up going in the meeting with Robert after the whole interview scene. She meets in a meeting with Robert Shaye, not Robert Englund, and she turns the role down. Because she's with her son. Her son's freaking out a little bit, and she's getting these creepy phone calls, and she just doesn't think that it's a good time to start, doing another film. And so, and this is actually pretty close to home for Heather, because she actually was a victim of a stalker, and she actually allowed Wes to put that in the film, and she actually agreed. That's a lot, and I got to give kudos for her for going through that with this movie. I mean, that must have been really tough, a really tough thing to do, and she didn't have to do it. So that's something that, yeah, really do appreciate, Heather for having the gall and the guts, so to speak, to go through with that in the film. In a way, it was her ability through this movie. She was able to face that, but she never probably was able to face it, face to face. So she was able to maybe close the book on that chapter of her life through this movie. So she turns it down, but then she returns home, and she realizes that Chase has been working on the film, of course, because Robert spills the beans. And then she's freaked out that Chase is working on the movie on a new claw, because that's a lot like the dream that she had. And then the frequent calls and Dylan's strange behavior cause her to call Chase, who agrees to rush him home from his work site, as the two men from the opening dream did not report to work. But Chase falls asleep while driving, is slashed by Freddy's claw, which results in his death. Had fun with the scene where he's driving down the road, and he's coming up with ways to keep himself awake, and he's singing songs, and then, he dozes off, and Freddy's claw comes out from the bottom, pretty much comes out from the inside of the seat, pops out in between his legs, and just guts him, pretty much. And then Nancy then gets that horrible moment that nobody, no wife, no mother, no father, nobody, no son, daughter, nobody wants this moment late at night where the police come up to the door and tell you pretty much that, yeah, we want you to go to the morgue and identify, your husband's body. So she goes to the morgue, and the morgue guy is trying not to show her the whole body, and she sees it, and then realizes there's these long, giant slashes on him, like claws. And so she doesn't believe that it's just from a truck crash. It's not just from shrapnel. So she's really affected by his death. It seems to affect Dylan even further, which causes the concern for Heather's longtime friend and former co-star John Saxon. Of course, you have the scene where they have the funeral scene where there's an earthquake, really creepy scene where she falls, and then she looks like she sees her husband wake up and then talk to her, and then he bleeds blood, and then the Freddy demon comes in and tries to take her son away. And then, of course, she wakes up after she took a pretty nasty hit to the head when the earthquake happened. And then, of course, she decided she wants to talk to Robert about this, Robert Englund, and then you have a cool scene where Heather's talking to Robert, and she's talking about how she's been getting nightmares. And she's like, actually, it's been giving me Freddy nightmares. And then Robert's like, wait a second. Now, let me get this straight. You're having nightmares about Freddy? As in me? And then Heather's like, no, it isn't you. He's scarier. And then Robert replies, darker. More evil. So I thought that was really, it was like, ooh. And then you see that Robert's painting this really demonic painting of like a demonic Freddy who looks a lot like the Freddy which we end up seeing in the film. And, there's even there's some good moments where she has with John Saxon. There's another good moment where she meets with Wes Craven, and he comes in. There's a whole sort of meeting between those two, which I thought was pretty good too, where Wes is saying, are you ready to become Nancy once again? And she asks him, this is still a script, right, Wes? And he's like, I don't know, because I've been having these dreams. And I think the only way to stop him is to make another movie. Now, I swear to you, I'm going to stay by this computer and keep writing until I finish this script. But when the time comes, you're going to have to make a choice. It's like, choice? What kind of choice? Whether or not you'll be willing to play Nancy one last time. Because the whole concept is, if Nancy was the force, the hero that stopped Freddy, the original Freddy. So she's one of the only people on this earth that can stop this demonic force and have the power to stop it. So I like that aspect of the film. And of course, while this is all going on, people think she's crazy. She has a moment where she's with John Saxon. Her kid decides to, because he heard something about, God taking him, and so it really pretty tense scene where he's climbing up on top of this play structure and leaps off, and Nancy catches him, thankfully, before he kills himself. And he says, God wouldn't take me. Just like, ooh, this kid is really, really messed up right now. So she talks to John Saxon. He suggests that she seek medical attention for both him and her. And after Heather has a nightmare at Chase's funeral, which I mentioned earlier, where Freddy tries to take Dylan away. Dylan himself continues to destabilize, becoming increasingly paranoid about going to sleep and fearing Freddy, even though Heather had never shown him her movies. There's some eerie sequences where Dylan's sleepwalking, and then out of nowhere, scenes from A Nightmare on Elm Street with Nancy would show up on the screen. And there's another good dream sequence where she had a dream where where she sees Dylan with these knives that he's taped to his hands like he's Freddy. And then she ends up visiting Wes Craven, who suggests that Freddy is an entity drawn to his films, released after the series is completed, and now focuses on Heather as Nancy as its primary foe. So that's the thing. She's the only one that can stop him because she was the primary foe for Freddy in the films. So he wants to take her out so he can roam free, so to speak. And Robert Englund also has strange knowledge of it, describing the new Freddy to Nancy, and then he disappears from all contact, which is kind of like what happened to Robert Englund. And then after another earthquake, Ever takes a traumatized Dylan to the hospital, where the head nurse, suspecting abuse, which is really a total bitch, suggests Dylan stay for observation. Ever returns home for Dylan's stuffed dinosaur, while his babysitter Julie tries to keep the nurses from sedating the sleep-deprived boy. Dylan falls asleep after the nurses sedate him successfully, and Freddy brutally kills Julie in Dylan's dream. Which is really not necessarily in his dream. I don't think it's in his dream, because Heather and all the nurses can see this. They can see this entity is coming into our world and killing this babysitter in this hospital. I don't think it's a dream. Like, Dylan falls asleep, but somehow he's able to project the entity, the demonic entity that's disguised as Freddy, is able to come into our world, because there's no reason why. Well, I guess kind of. Yeah, it is in his dream. He sees it, but all the other nurses, they see the girl being dragged up the ceiling. And it was shot in a revolving room again, just like the sequence with Tina. In a lot of ways, this is a remake of the death scene, with Tina. But I still like it. It's still very visceral and intense. And you can't have a feel for the babysitter, because she's just absolutely helpless. Then, of course, you have the whole scene where Freddy is talking to Dylan, and he's all like, talking about, "Hey, Dylan, ever play Skin the Cat?" And then slashes her up the wall. It's not as bloody as Tina's death scene, though, but it's still really effective. And, excuse me, but yeah, it's a pretty intense sequence. And I like Freddy's look in this. He's got a green hat. He's pimping. Freddy's totally pimping in this sequence. So Freddy kills Julie in Dylan's dream, capable of sleepwalking. Dylan leaves the hospital on his own accord, where then Heather chases him home across the interstate. And that scene is some of the most suspenseful, nail-biting sequences in the entire franchise. I mean, God, yeah, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like curled up in a ball, I was like, holy shit, because it was really well done, really well edited, really well set up. And the trucks flying around, crashing, and Langenkamp trying to get the kid away from the traffic. You're hoping Heather doesn't get hit by all these cars speeding all over the place. It was a very effective sequence. One of the most effective sequences in the entire franchise, and when it comes to just suspense. And that's where you get the awesome shot of Freddy in the clouds, and he's trying to bring his claw out and grab Dylan and lift him up in the air and take him away. And Heather, dangles him in front of traffic, but Heather saves him. And I guess Heather did this scene multiple times. Like, there's a scene that she ended up shooting. She ended up shooting like over 100 times. Because it took over 100 takes to get the shot right. And because this was done on a green screen. And the next day, Heather Langenkamp couldn't walk because she was so sore from doing the takes. Which, hey, thanks for toughing it out, Heather, because it's a great sequence. And it's a green screen sequence, but it looks fantastic. It didn't look like it was on a green screen. It was a very effective green screen sequence. Great visual effect. And then, of course, that's where you see brief glimpses of the Freddy, like the multiple different, like a dozen or more Freddy clones on the side of the freeway. I think there was more to that, but I think that scene was cut. But anyway, yeah, I really love that sequence. So she saves Dylan, and then she returns home, and then she realizes that John has established his persona as Don Thompson, which is a really surreal moment, where you have that whole scene where John's talking to Heather, and he's like, "What the hell is going on, Nancy?" And Heather's like, "Why are you calling me Nancy, John?" And John's like, "Why are you calling me John, Nancy? Nancy, pull yourself together before you make yourself and the kid nuts." And Heather Langenkamp's like, "John, would you call Robert?" John's like, "Robert? Robert Englund. You know the guy who plays Freddy?" John Saxon's like, "Freddy who?" Freddy Krueger? Nancy, Freddy's dead. Don't start losing it like your mother did. I love you, sweetheart. Don't forget that. I love you too, Daddy. And then he turns into Don Thompson. Slowly as the scene goes on, he gets the badge and everything, and then she gets the same nightgown she wore in the first film. It was a pretty trippy, surreal moment. And so she ends up embracing this role of Nancy, and Freddy was pretty much wanting her to do that so he could kill Nancy. And then Freddy then emerges completely into reality and takes Dylan into his world. Heather then finds a trail of sleeping pills and follows him into a dark underworld. Which I love the look of this. It's very hellish. Really, definitely looks like something straight out of Dante's Inferno. And Freddy then fights off Heather and then chases Dylan into an oven. Dylan escapes the oven and doubles back to Heather. And together they manage to push Freddy into the oven and light it. And I like the scene, of course. I love a lot of scenes like in this moment, and even of course, you can't forget this moment. And this is way before. This is when he first saw Nancy, and he's like, "Miss me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." A lot of people miss that Freddy, so it was nice to see that type of Freddy again. And as much as I like Freddy's Dead, in films like Dream Warriors and The Dream Master, I do really like the Dark Freddy. The Dark Freddy is definitely the one that started it all. And so, in a way, when he said "miss me," it was like, you missed this Freddy, audiences. And then there's a whole scene where, Freddy's definitely really evil here. And he's talking about, pick a pet for the Rugrat, bitch. Because he pushes Heather's face in a floor full of snakes and eels, and she jabs an eel into Freddy's eye. Fuck you! And then punches Freddy in the face. It was an awesome scene. And it was just because originally I think Heather was supposed to say something like "fuck you" in the original cut of Nightmare on Elm Street, but she didn't. Nancy didn't say that, but now she gets to say it and stabs him in the eye. Fuck you! And then splits his tongue open. The kid finds a knife and splits Freddy's tongue open. So it looks like a serpent's tongue. You even see a snake earlier in the scene, so it's symbolic. Because, the snake was, the devil was a snake. And then the only problem I have with this scene is I love the tongue effect. It's really well done, where it's wrapping around Heather's face. And then Miko Hughes stabs it and then lets the tongue go. And, of course, before he tried to eat her, and the jaw drops open. It's really effective. I thought it was a pretty great practical effect. But when they put him in the furnace and the fire effect isn't that great, and then the demon looks really shitty. It's a really goofy ass looking demon with googly eyes and shit. It's really bad. It's a really bad looking demon. I would have. They just should have never shown the demon. That was a mistake. Don't show me the demon. Just show Freddy as the demon as Freddy burn up. Didn't need to see that. That was really bad. It doesn't affect the film really that much at all for me, but it is the one glaring moment other than Miko Hughes' performance where I'm like, oh god, that's bad. But then they escape. They just destroy the monster, destroy the demon Freddy, and then destroy his whole reality in the process. And then they emerge from under his blanket, and then Heather finds a copy of the film's events as a screenplay at the foot of the bed. And inside is a thanks from Wes for defeating Freddy and playing Nancy one last time. Dylan asks if it's a story, then Heather agrees it's just a story before opening the script and reading from its pages to her son. And it's a great way to end it, and it literally starts reading the opening of the film that we just saw. And of course, the last words. Heather, thank you for having the strength to play Nancy one last time. At last, Freddy is back where he belongs. Regards, Wes. Dylan asks his mom, Heather, is like, is it a story? And Heather's like, yeah, it's a story. Dylan's like, read me some. And then she reads it. We open on an old wooden bench. There's fire and tools in the background, and what looks like a pair of hands building what is revealed to be a shiny set of claws. The claws are moving now, as if awakening from a long unwanted sleep. Slowly the man places a trembling hand onto the bench. Behind the lights, people watch in silence, ready to laugh or scream out in terror. And then the film ends. It is just It's great. It's a great feeling. And you're just like, wow, like, that's so interesting. It's so unique. That's so different. Because there really wasn't another film like this until New Nightmare. Of course, you had Scream and other films like that eventually. But this is the one that really started it all. I really honestly think this is the one that started it all. There might have been some other ones that I'm not really that familiar with, but this is the one that started it. And it did a great job with it. So yeah, I really don't know what else to say about the film, except I really enjoy this movie. I think it's a great movie. It doesn't have a really high body count. It's not really that goriest film ever, but that's not what it's going for. It's more of a slow burn, suspenseful, meta horror film, and it does a great job with that. Great performances by the cast, great direction and writing by Wes. Decent, good makeup effects when they're there, when they need to be, except for the look of the demon. But that's the effect itself didn't look bad. It was just the design that was a problem. But overall, excellent movie. I think it was a really, really great film. A really fantastic movie, a wonderful experience, a very, like I said, immersive, a very immersive, well thought out, ingenious film that I think will continue to stand the test of time for many, many years to come. So anyway, yeah, I really don't know what else to say except if I was a rate out of 5 stars, I would give New Nightmare. I'm gonna give it a tie with the first film, 5 out of 5. Like I said, the ending didn't bother me that much with the first film, and all that I have problems with is Miko Hughes' inconsistent acting, and then the look of the demon at the end. And that's it. Those are the only problems I have with the movie, and they don't affect my overall enjoyment of the movie that much at all, or the overall quality of the film. I think it's an amazing, excellent film, and yeah, I love it. New Nightmare is a classic, a great film, one of the best sequels out there. And really, what it is, it's its own film because it's not really a part of the same franchise that Freddy's Revenge and Dream Warriors and Dream Master, Dream Child, and Freddy's Dead were a part of. It's its own film. It's set in its own separate universe, and that's another thing that I think really makes it stand out because a lot of other sequels don't really take that approach, and for good reason because it's a risk, but this is definitely a risk that was worth taking. It was high risk and a high reward. So anyway, thanks for watching my review of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and I will see you guys later. See ya.